And we are live. Oh my god, this is going to be a funny one today. The idea is that we're going to talk about um, blah blah blah, economics, authoritarian, and individual. Um, the first thing we would surprisingly do approach would be the economic part, but the persons doing the talk, or mostly wanting to do the talk about that, aren't here yet. So they'll get here later. So for now, we'll just ramble.
Yay!
Yeah, Ramble's the best thing. And I got to get a beer in about 10 minutes time.
Yeah, no, first you gotta continue where you left off, mate.
Okay.
Life.
Yes, me and John, we were discussing the capitalism. What is it, capitalism? I said, I'll let John talk, obviously. I'll just get my 1.5 minutes. My definition. Capitalism is a model, an economic model, and it involves capital. Now, capital in capitalism is generated, reinvested, and also obtained to perpetuate the model. So, a company first obtains capital to build a company. Then it builds a company. It generates capital, and then it reinvests the capital back in the company to grow. That is basically what capitalism is, right? That is my definition of capitalism. Off to you, John.
Two things. First, I think that's a company uses capital to produce wealth.
Hello.
It is wealth that's produced, not capital.
Son.
Some of the wealth may be turned back into capital, but not necessarily. And the main problem with a lot of people is they think of capitalism as the economic system we have in the West, which is actually defined in law and not a pure system as such. It is actually a legally defined system. Therefore, it is an instantiation, not the pure system itself.
Oh, I agree with you on that aspect, but that's just not pure. That's not the model. That is the regulation.
No, that's what I'm saying. But one of the problems one gets is that when we talk about capitalism, it's getting people understanding what is being referred to, because a lot of people will automatically go to a particular instantiation of it, not the concept widely in the abstract.
I think I sort of enunciated. I spelt out. That's a better word.
No, you did. I'm merely saying that when one says to someone, "What do you think about capitalism?" you cannot predict exactly what they will have thought of.
Oh no, there are a lot of things that they misrepresent capitalism as, but we will discuss that when it's time has come up, because I have a little list.
I'm interested in your list.
Exactly. These are just talking points. So if they come up, I can
another point
and against them. That's what's good about it. But
there is another point which I heard someone raise. This is not mine, so I will take no blame for it. All systems have capital. Even communism has capital. The question is, who owns it?
True.
I can agree with that. Yes.
That's true.
Yes.
But the thing is that capitalism isn't just about who has capital. Capitalism is about what is needed to create capital.
Labor.
Isn't that supply and demand?
It's supply and demand. Labor, yes, but in capitalism,
no. All wealth is created through labor. There is no other means of creating wealth.
Unfortunately, that is no longer true. But I understand.
No. It is true. And the thing is, you can say, oh, well, what about computers? But computers only exist because they were created by labor. It might be indirect, but it's still true.
Yeah, but no, it's not true, because fractional banking basically reduces the need for labor to create.
No. The only reason anything produces wealth is because of the labor originally put in.
Hedge funds.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
You don't
Hedge
need
funds
labor
don't
for
create
that.
wealth.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't. No,
yes,
they
they
don't.
do.
They do.
They
They do create wealth.
They create capital. Let me call it like
Capital,
that.
yes, capital. They're better than
No,
wealth.
they do not create.
Oh yeah, they do.
How do they create?
capital.
They create capital
How?
by buying something, breaking it up, and selling it at a profit.
No. Then they're not creating.
Yeah, they are.
No, they're not creating. Because that wealth.
If I buy something for I buy a car.
Gambling is creating capital. Gambling. That's what hedge fund is.
Yeah,
you are
in
gambling.
System, right? In a system, there is so much of X. If you do not make more of X, you are not creating. In the entire system, they're redistributing. They are not creating.
Gambling is creating wealth without the
creating wealth.
Yes, it is.
The money comes from somewhere.
Let me explain. Without the need for labor.
No. It is acquiring wealth for one individual at the expense of another individual.
That's
not creating wealth. Creating wealth is
not wealth. No. John. Don't use wealth. Capital. Wealth is something totally different from. You can have capital and not be wealthy. That is something different. The thing is capital. Can we read?
No.
Wealth does not have anything to do with
capital. If you have all the world and you have all the whatever you want to call it, capital on the world.
Yes.
If you don't make any more, but purely it goes from one person to another, you've not created anything. If, on the other hand, you put in labor to mine minerals, grow crops, produce something, you are creating. There is more at the end of it than before you
creating
start. If you do a hedge fund, it just shuffles money around. That is not creating.
But you're wrong, because by shuffling money around, they are creating capital. Because they start moving $10, and at the end of the story, they have 15. So they
have 15. 5. Who lost the 5?
But that's the thing. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not that someone has to lose 5. Economics is not a zero-sum game. This is why so many people keep falling for the bull.
How does Bitcoins work? How does Bitcoins work?
And you sell it.
How does Bitcoins work? How does Bitcoins work?
It's a Ponzi scheme.
Not necessarily. How does Bitcoins work?
It's a Ponzi scheme.
The stock market is a Ponzi scheme. How does Bitcoins work?
Stock market. It is.
But that's how wealth is created. That's how capital is created.
It does not. The stock market.
You have someone investing. You have someone investing in an idea. John, you have someone investing. You create an investment opportunity. People will invest in that opportunity. Okay. That is creating wealth. You don't lose. No. You do not lose. You make. You create.
No. You are fundamentally wrong. Okay. A company sells its stock. That brings money into the system, right? Once that company has sold its stock, none of the trading helps the company and helps the company do business.
Yes, it does. That's why the stock market goes up and down.
No. Where does the money go? It goes to people who've already got the stock who are not directly involved in the business. And
the money mostly goes to investing back into the company to make it grow.
Not in the stock market.
Yes, it does.
Even in the stock market,
doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't. The value of a company is based on the value of its shares, and because of the share value going up, the company's value goes up as well.
Yeah, but the company
and
doesn't
it reinvests
have a
part of that
more
capital
to
back
spend.
into the company
You
itself.
don't
So
understand how it works.
it
Yeah,
reinvests parts of the capital, not the wealth. The wealth is what the people get, but I'm talking about the capital system, the company, not the people who make up the company, who are the CEOs and that. That is what is wealth. Now, the company is the capital. It receives capital. It does not receive wealth.
Yeah, and once it's received the capital and the
Yes.
stocks are out there, all
Yes.
trading on the stocks has no financial impact.
Yes. Yes, it does if it goes
on
up.
the money within the company.
If the stocks go up, there is more capital to reinvest.
No,
yes, there is.
No,
that is why
it doesn't
Apple
affect the balance sheet.
That is why Apple just passed $1 trillion of worth.
Yeah, worth
because it's
the people
are investing
holding the stocks.
Because people are investing in it. No, you can get new people to invest in a company if it's linked on the stock exchange. It's not a closed system.
Only when they issue new shares.
No, you can buy them. You're talking about the limited shares that they are held by the stockholders. But the public opening, when you publicly float a company, those shares that are publicly floated, it is 49% normally, are the ones that are completely traded, bought by everyone on earth.
The company has got its money, all trades bring no more money to the company.
You're thinking of the 51% that are held by the stockholders, the majority shareholders.
Carlos, please, may I?
Yes,
John,
go on. Yes,
I have a company.
Get my beer.
I bring my company to the stock market.
Yeah.
Now, 50% of the shares I own, 50% of, 51%. No, listen to me first before you respond. 51% of the shares I own, 49% of my shares I sell. Now, a lot of people are trading. I sold those 49% for X money.
Yeah.
Now, those 49% outside of my own company are being sold between people, and people are very interested in owning my share. So the prices of my shares go up, which means that personally, I don't get more money, but the people trading my shares get more money.
Exactly.
But here's the kicker. Because trade in my shares are so good, I will increase the amount of shares. No, let me finish. Out of the 100 shares I have, of which I own 51, I double that to 200 shares. Now, I already owned more than the people outside.
So you issue some more shares, which is what I said. You only get more money when you issue more shares.
No, it's not so much that I issue more shares. I split the shares. So every share becomes 2 shares.
Yeah, that's issuing more shares.
Fair enough. But by that way, I'm making more money because I've got more stuff to sell.
You honestly haven't got a clue.
But I'm not actually producing anything. I'm merely changing around numbers.
No. You honestly haven't got a clue how it works.
Well, I do.
Because there are a number of shares, right? That's what a share is. A share is literally a share.
Yes.
And it's split X ways, however many shares there are. When you issue new shares, you devalue the existing ones.
Not necessarily.
Because there are now more shares. So a share, instead of being a fifth, is now only a sixth, or a sixth is only a seventh.
That's
and the value of the company is still the same.
But that's part of what the share market is. But that's one of the ways.
No. But there's two. You conflated two things. One.
No, I haven't.
The money coming to the company.
Exactly.
By selling its shares.
Capital. Money is a capital.
Trading of the shares.
That's generating capital.
And they are two separate.
No, yes, they are. One is the capital and the other one is the generation of capital.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. So I'm
But they are
saying
linked.
once a company has raised money on the stock market, the activities of the stock market, yes, they can affect the prospects of the company, because if your shares tank, all of a sudden you've got a problem, even though absolutely nothing within your company has changed.
No, but you're still generating capital in the publicly shared stock that you have in the stock exchange.
Done it. You've done it.
And you don't have labor. Your premise at the start was you need labor to generate capital. We have given you an example that you don't need labor to generate capital. And the stock exchange is one of them. Am I right or not?
I agree with you.
Because the people buying the stocks, they do labor.
That's not labor. No, that is not labor.
They do labor to generate their capital to buy stocks.
No, labor is what John said at the start.
No, I didn't say capital is labor. I said wealth is generated by
wealth
labor.
is what the people who are involved in the company get. Capitalism is not the people; it is the company itself, the model. You have to. You guys have to. That's a problem with many of the definitions. We have to separate the model.
We could spend 2 hours arguing over the definitions.
But we're not arguing. We're discussing.
No, discussing.
Discussing.
I'm
Come
using
on, man.
arguing in the
Exactly in the discussing terms. We agree on that. Exactly. Okay. Shit. We have.
I don't mean argue as in argue as in debate.
The capitalism is capital generation. Now, it's not the people.
No, capitalism isn't capital generation. Capitalism is a system whereby the people who have the means invest into the ownership of a business or some share of the business shares, and therefore get a return from the profits of the business. That is a system that we are referring to as capitalism.
No, that's not true either, John.
Okay.
Because capitalism is also the actions of the individual taken. So even an individual can become a capitalist by merely producing.
Yeah. But then
generating wealth, exactly.
But they don't need to.
Well, generating capital, I mean, not wealth.
They don't have to invest wealth to begin with. I mean,
except Modwain. That system has existed as long as humanity.
We have 10 more minutes of discussing this, and then we're going on to the actual.
Well, I'm still waiting.
Don't you need to grab your beer, Carlos?
Sorry.
Well, that too.
No, I've got my beer here.
No, I've given this example when talking about capitalism a few times in the past. A beggar walking the streets, finding a few beer cans that someone thrown away, using those beer cans to make children's toys and selling them, is a capitalist.
Yeah, because he did creating value through labour.
Exactly, that's one way.
Creating value through labour, which was my point.
It's
the labour that creates the value.
John, please let me finish a sentence. It's not that he needs wealth to partake in capitalism.
And my point is that isn't capitalism. Because that system has existed as long as humans.
No, it hasn't. No. It hasn't. No,
it hasn't. Because back in the days,
you're saying that people seeing an opportunity and then taking it hasn't always happened.
Yeah,
no.
Quite feudalism
for a nice piece of flint.
Not in economic
created a nice
sense.
hand axe and traded it for a skin. That didn't happen. Of course it did.
But that's not capitalism.
Yeah, so why is the beggar picking up some cans and turning into toys capitalism?
Because that is capitalism, but the difference is
barter.
Let me finish. Come on, John. Seriously, I like our discussions. I really do. But let me get a word in edgewise every once in a while.
Exactly.
The thing is, what's the difference? If we look at a beggar now, finding trash and trying to make money out of it and actually making money, that money is his. If we go back to the feudal system, for example, if a beggar would find toys and he would make money, that money wouldn't always stay his.
Can I add something?
I didn't who said anything about feudalism. I said way back in prehistory.
There have been many times in history where this simply was not the case.
Bartering. Can I just bartering?
Yeah,
where you trade a cow for 3 sheep, a flint knife, or a really well-produced flint knife for 2 rabbits in the past is not capitalism, because what you receive and what you give is direct value, correct? Now, capitalism, that beggar that Modwain said, gets something, adds a value to it, and he gets more than it is worth.
No, it's not. It gets exactly what it's worth.
No, it gets more. The tin can.
More paid for it.
You transformed a tin can, right, from that could be worth what, 5 cents, to a toy that could be worth $30, for example. Yeah. That is transformation
through labor, which is what I said.
But the barter system also involves labor, because the flint knife had to, but he only trades it for an equal value.
Yeah, and so did the tramp. The tramp sold it for the equal.
No, he didn't. He transformed it for a greater value.
You start with an input, right? You add value through your labor, and you sell it for what someone will pay. That is the market system.
Yeah, but that's not the barter system.
Market
I didn't say anything about barter. I said that was the market system.
Agriculture.
You said it was always there. This proves it wasn't.
The concept of you create something, it has value, you exchange it, whether it's money or other goods.
Do you know that capitalism allowed a specialization of skills?
There was a specialization of skills long before capitalism.
No, it wasn't. No.
So you're saying there was no specialization of skills as soon as we became settled in cities?
Everyone in a hunter-gatherer society were specialized in everything.
That's a
generalization. Now, with agriculture, you were allowed to specialize. You did not have to work to provide your food to obtain material. That is the basis of capitalism. So,
okay, so
there was not from the beginning of human
beginning of agriculture,
because that's where it began.
Okay, fine. No, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Also,
trying to tease out,
and it wasn't always there, because in certain societies, people were working for someone else. So whatever you would create,
people are always working for somebody else. Not everybody. Somebody has to be the person worked for.
Not always. Not always. But if we look at the feudal systems, where capital in itself already had a little bit of traction, not as much as it had during the early Roman days or the Byzantine Empire, but okay, fair enough. There were places where capitalism didn't be allowed to exist, because creation was okay. You could create stuff, but you wouldn't get the value from what you created.
But isn't value what we determine it to be anyways?
Exactly, that's what I said.
That is true.
The value is what someone will pay.
It's like 1 cow is equals to 3 sheep. Somebody else
not in that way. Not in that way. Look at it more.
It's just how much. Isn't it just how much you value something?
No. Look at it in a different way. If you as a serf were working the land, and you found a way to work the land better, which would be a great thing to do in capitalism, but in the feudal system that didn't really help you that much, because that only meant that the lord would take more of what you already had.
You said under capitalism, if you work in a factory and you find a better way to work, you might not see any value either, and that's still under capitalism.
That's not true, though, because that will give you usually, and I'm not saying always.
No, there is no guarantee. You can't say the usually.
Okay, fair enough. Then I can't say usually. But more often than not, let me say it like that then, when you are inventive enough to help your boss produce faster.
No,
your
there's
boss.
nothing inherent in the system that guarantees.
You won't even let me finish a sentence, John. Come on, mate. Why can't I finish? When you work for a company, right, and you find a way to produce easier for the boss, then on average, most bosses will try to keep you within the company. So they will promote you, they'll give you more money, because they see that you have value for them.
And by producing more, you can also generate more money, right?
Right.
But it's not.
Doesn't that trickle down to the rest of your workers as well?
Probably, most likely.
Well, it's not even just that, though, right? So there's there used to be a grocery store in the United States, Woolworths. And J.W. Woolworth, the guy that invented it, worked for free at the beginning of his career for a local grocery chain. And he spent his time at the beginning of his life learning the business, as it were, decided he knew how to do it better, struck out on his own, created the Woolworths Corporation, and about 10 years after he took a job where he literally made nothing, he hired the former owner of his grocery store that he started at after he had put it out of business. So if your company is not compensating you, as I think we could all agree, not getting paid means that they're not, when you were pretty free to start something up and there wasn't a massive regulatory burden, the answer was put them out of business.
So yeah, when you look at a capitalistic system, a boss will want to reward those that are inventive, because being inventive creates more capitalism for them, and more capitalism, more capital for the one being inventive, either being that as a serf or as someone who works for someone else, or by starting his own company. But one of the reasons why in a capitalistic system the boss would try to keep you and prevent you from starting your own company is, one, because he can then benefit from your creativity, and two, he eliminates competition, because if you work for him, you're not his competition. And he'd rather have you there, so he'll create wealth for you to stay.
And for him.
And for him. Listen, I once applied to a job somewhere, and they asked me what I wanted to earn. And it was a project I wanted to set up. Unfortunately, someone stole my idea and they set it up, and fair enough, it worked, so that's good. And they asked me what I wanted to earn, and I said, I have no idea what I want to earn, because I've never done this job outside of prison. I wanted to build a system, or not so much a system, to help inmates who go back into society, to give them a little more support whilst getting back into regular jobs. And I went to a temp agency to get this project started. Unfortunately, they did get the project started, but with someone else. But they asked me what I wanted to earn, and I said, I have no idea, because I don't know what people in this job earn. Okay, so he said, well, listen, it's quite simple. You can say whatever you want, because it doesn't matter much to me. You can earn $10,000 a month, as long as you earn me that money too. So yeah, that's the way it goes. A boss is willing to pay you more if you're worth it. And now everyone is quiet.
That makes sense, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's basically capitalism.
No.
That's kind of like with my veteran table furniture idea. It's like, I don't know what the fuck all this shit is worth. I only know the basics from buying all this stuff, but after that it's like, how much more should we add on to get a company running and keep it running and all that sort of shit? Like, fuck if I know.
Yeah, and that's part of of learning and understanding and getting to figure out how to
generate
money. Wealth and all that. But a beggar on the street can pick up tin cans and start making stuff from that and sell them, and that's already generated wealth.
Yeah, but the problem, Mod,
muted me. Who the fuck muted me?
First, you're looking at a 21st century understanding of capitalism. Secondly, you're extrapolating to vastly different businesses of scale and scope. The fact is not all business owners will reward a good idea, and there is nothing inherent in the system to make them do so, and that was my point. There's nothing to stop the feudal lord from promoting the person with the good idea.
No, but there is something that stops the person with a good idea from overthrowing the lord.
Yeah,
no,
that's why they stopped them.
There were very strict laws to stop them overthrowing the feudal lord.
The laws were violence. There was no laws.
Oh, there were lots. No, there were lots of laws. That's why there was Magna Carta, remember. Magna Carta was introduced because the barons didn't like the king doing what he wanted without consulting them.
We had none of that.
Yeah, but, you know, talking to an American, then they understand Magna Carta.
I know, I understand Magna Carta. I'm just saying that we had none of that.
Yeah, but
we had no feudal system.
Modwain was talking about a feudal system, and that was the feudal system. The feudal system was literally the country belonged to the king. Literally, it still does.
That's where we link to the authoritarianism of this sort of thing. But
yep.
I mean, technically, the queen owns the house I live in and everything in this country. That's on the law in this country.
But that's in England.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So
England isn't the only wasn't the only one with a feudal system.
But the point is, you can't say under feudalism and then say, oh, here's an example of feudalism, blah blah blah. Oh, well, that wasn't the only one.
I got a question. Can I send the link out to Humane Mind like he was wanted to join?
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
Just to answer what Smirkus said about his costs and how does he make money. Well, he adds the material that he buys. He adds the taxes that he has to pay. Then he multiplies it by 2.5% for each of that money for the labor that he has per hour that he produces. And he gets to what the final cost of what he produces. That's what I go by. So.
Cool.
That's called capitalism. You multiply.
You know what the original complaint for the communists was?
Go on.
The inability of workers to do just that.
But that's the point
capitalism
of
is
workers.
just about that.
No. Before industrialization, workers were their own businesses for the most part.
For the most
if they worked harder, they made more products, they got more money. Under industrialization, they were paid fixed wages based on very long days, and nothing they did resulted in more money. They had no control.
Actually, that's not really true, because if we look at the beginning of industrialization, one of the main things that made industrialization grow was it allowed for unskilled labor.
No, it de-skilled the labor. Jobs that were done by skilled labor became de-skilled labor.
It allowed the employment of unskilled labor. This is why the guilds were so dead set against.
Yeah, exactly. And so the skilled labor.
You had skilled carpenters who could make something, but you had unskilled labor that
used machines,
used machinery and whatnot to produce something roughly the same, but a lot cheaper.
Yeah. And so the market for the skilled labor was taken out from under it, and that was the complaint.
Well, you always need skilled workers to teach the unskilled workers.
Now.
But there is a difference between capitalism and industrialization. Industrialization doesn't automatically mean capitalism.
Nope. Like I said, it's a model, an economic model. Everything else that derives from that economic model is everything else. Industrialization, mechanization, miniaturization, everything that comes from the model that is allowed by capitalism.
Okay, so here's
Innovation,
why.
even innovation.
Here's why it's important to define it, because thanks to Marx fucking up his definitions, the system they opposed wasn't capitalism, it was the industrialization process. And as you say, they're not the same thing. The problem is all the Marxists think they are the same thing. And so they say we're anti-capitalist because Marx painted a target on the wrong back.
Shit. Like I said, I have my list here. Greed is a thing attributed to a capitalism, but that's a human nature. That has nothing to do with the model. Because all those things, greed. What else did I have? The definitions.
Actually, every system uses capital. Everyone is a capitalist, and then you have different economic systems. The feudal.
Exactly, but the only difference is that capitalism.
Alicia.
Yeah.
See, you're not there, and even you're making sense now.
Exactly. Capitalism is purely only an economic model. It has no ideology. It has no ideology attached to it.
Yeah, no, but this is what I'm saying. Certain people talk about capitalism, and they don't mean capitalism. But when everyone talks about capitalism, it's what these people are referring to, not what capitalism really is. And that's why getting the definitions right is so important. Because if we are talking about what you mean, I don't even understand why we need to debate it.
But that's what it is.
That's fine, but it's not what most people mean.
Most people know it's what some people mean.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say. So if you say to a Marxist, are you for capitalism? They'll go, no. But only because they have a fundamentally different conception of what you're talking about.
Exactly. But because they add ideology to it, that's what I mean. Capitalism,
it's not ideology, it's a misframing by Marx, which is a slightly different thing.
It's the same thing. Marx was an ideologue. He made ideologies. But capitalism is simply...
He tried not to.
No, he did. He
tried not to.
In fact, you cannot apply Marxism today at all, because the modern concept of the modern evolution of what capitalism has become is totally different from what it was at the beginning.
I know, absolutely, and Marx knew that.
No, he didn't, because
he did.
How are we off the mark of basically anything that any of these terms do? You can apply Marxism and apply capitalism. Both of them have ready application. Now, Marx.
Sorry, you sounded very mumbled up.
There, you can barely hear you, mate.
Oh yeah.
Take the microphone out of the toilet roll, please.
For example.
That's what it kind of sounds like. It sounded like your mic was underwater.
Oh,
okay.
Coming back in a sec.
Anyway, as I was saying, capitalism is simply an economic model. You can have Keynesian economics, for example, model trickle down or trickle up. It doesn't matter.
Trickle down is a lie.
I know it is, but do you see what I mean? It's just simply a means.
Hey, am I
generate?
Audible again?
Yes.
All right, man. It just means capitalism is just a means to generate capital, nothing else.
No, I understand. I understand your definition. As I say, in that case,
I don't think it's my definition. I think that is the definition of capitalism.
But it's not what people understand by the term.
I'm not arguing that, John. Now let's hear what the two plebs have to say, because they were making a point. Go on, plebs.
Look.
Now you're muffled again.
Oh man.
Oh God, I'm gonna shut up. Re-enter and I'll shut up. So it's probably me. Sorry about that.
It's
not actually.
Your voice gives other people's mics cancer.
Good.
All right. So, if I may speak here for a little bit, if we're talking about like definitions and conceptions.
Okay, that's long enough. Now someone else.
What?
I'm sorry. I'm just being nasty now. You said if I can talk here for a minute, okay, I'll let you have a few words, and then
I didn't even get to talk for 60 seconds, dude.
Yeah, I'm crap with timekeeping. Haven't you noticed that?
I told Modwain that me and John would hog this.
No, but seriously.
But we are awesome.
All right. So, as far as conceptions and definitions of capitalism goes, I mean, if I'm to, okay, I have like Investopedia and Merriam-Webster here. By definition from Merriam-Webster, and capitalism, the definition of capitalism is an economic system characterized by private or corporate ownership of capital goods, by investments that are determined by private decision, and by prices, production, and the distribution of goods that are determined mainly by competition in a free market. And I would probably have to like read this entire article from Investopedia because it's quite a lengthy one. But in the first paragraph here, let me just screen share here. All right. What role does the government play in capitalism? The proper role of government in a capitalist economic system has been hotly debated for centuries. Capitalism operates on two central tenets: private ownership and voluntary or free trade. These dual concepts are antagonistic with the nature of government. Governments are public, not private institutions. They do not engage voluntarily, but rather use taxes, regulations, police, and military to pursue objectives that are free of the considerations of capitalism. Strictly speaking, any government intervention in a capitalist economy takes place outside the defined confines of capitalism. So what I would argue capitalism to basically be is that crony capitalism is not really capitalism. It's like a watered down version of capitalism.
Because I don't like the term crony capitalism. Crony capitalism is an excuse.
Right.
What we're talking about when we're talking about crony capitalism is plutocracy.
Plutocracy. Okay, yeah. So
people call it corporatism as well, but it's the rule of money.
All right. I guess that would be more. I guess plutocracy would be a little bit more of a sophisticated way of saying it than crony capitalism. But I was raised hearing the term crony capitalism all my life whenever I listened to talk radio hosts and so on and so forth. But
you are a young whippersnapper.
Yeah, I'm a young whippersnapper. I got a question.
My lord.
I'm presuming that I am younger than at least 4 of you, but Smirkus, I wonder how old Smirkus is.
32.
30. Oh, damn. Okay, yeah, I am the youngest whippersnapper here. 23, bitches. But anyway, as I was saying, Owen McDonald, like going back to Owen McDonald, because that was kind of what brought up the conversation for last week was the Twitter spat that I had with him over Twitter. Owen always brings up the argument that capitalism was that the 2007, 2008 financial crash of the United States, for example, was a cause of capitalism. But the thing that he would like to ignore pretty much is that capitalism is explicitly private. I mean, the more role that you have government into intervening in a free market, the less capitalistic it is. So
yes, I said it's a plutocracy. It's government protecting money at the cost of its people. Where capitalism is basically no one is protecting money, and whoever has the best idea will achieve with that good idea. So if you can produce something for €20, and I can produce the same exact article with the same quality for less than your €20, capitalism says I will be successful.
Yep.
Crony capitalism or plutocracy says if you produce it for €20 and you get the politicians to make sure that I am not allowed to produce it any cheaper, you win.
Exactly.
Oh, right. Yeah, if you have the government like rigging the game for one corporation over another, or one company, one private company over another private company, that would be plutocracy as well.
Yeah, like the EpiPen. thing that Modwain talked about a while back.
Yeah, perfect example. Actually talked to someone today about the EpiPen. I mean, it's less than 50-cent epinephrine. It's an auto-injector that costs less than €2.50 to make, or $2 to make. And you sell it for €600.
I want to say something like, actually, no, I'm going to let Two Plebs talk if he can get his mic on.
Yeah, I should talk.
But good question. Do I sound like a human being again?
Oh, awesome, man.
Well, for the time being.
Talk.
Yeah, right. Do it quick. So I'm fairly certain we've moved on at this point, but capitalism and Marxism still have modern day applications. And the idea that economic models, because technology has changed, are no longer viable is unrealistic at best. And the idea of an evolving view of base principles is fairly wrong in every way imaginable. So, I mean, what you end up with is a system where the idea for capitalism is that you are just permitted to own yourself, your labor, your property, these sorts of things, and you are permitted to exchange them for whatever value you can get for them. These principles don't change any attempt to add to them produces this effect where we start talking about, well, there's no true capitalism or this sort of thing, and how we equally get some no true Marxism kind of stuff. And this is the sort of thing where Marx did lay out an economic model. It was just pretty garbage.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Something that I want to mention before I completely forget about it. Talking about plutocracy versus capitalism. In a debate that Owen MacDonald, he had with another capitalist named A Very Dead Horse. Very Dead Horse, he brought up as I said before, Owen always brings up these examples of government causing economic crashes and blames that on capitalism and so on and so forth. And Dead Horse, during his debate with Owen, he actually mentioned the definition of capitalism to say that capitalism is free, or the definition of capitalism is to be free from the government, to not have the government intervene in the market. And Owen was like getting triggered over that. It was entertaining. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's what we mean saying. Capitalism is just a model. It's how you generate capital.
Right?
Yeah.
It
can be like at the beginning of the beginning. The capitalism basically started with the Industrial Revolution. That is a fact. Around late 1700s, when the British began. That's where it started. The Industrial Revolution. I'm not going to spell out the history of it, but that's where capitalism began. Up until then, there was the systems where local people would produce goods that they would sell, and most of them were barter systems. Hardly money was exchanged. Most of the time, money was not exchanged. It was just simple trade. The fairs up until that time were basically trading a cow for sheep or for potatoes or everything. I had that in my country with my actual family, doing what was called contraband. We were trading potatoes for corn or wheat or whatever. That is
I have a question. Would that I'm sorry, I wasn't paying total attention, but would that be defined as capitalism? You trading one good for another good, like sheep for cow?
No, because you're not increasing the value. You're just trading equal value. Yeah, capitalism means generating value.
Like I said, isn't that just depending on the people themselves?
No, it doesn't depend on people. It does not depend on people.
Hold on. This is why. No, sorry, I kind of want to make this point. This is why a lot of people still have a problem with economics. This is why a lot of people still seem to think that economics is a zero-sum game, because in barter system, it is. But in capitalism, it isn't.
That's what I'm getting at. Is capitalism? And hold on, give me a minute, because this is going to be a pain, right? So we're now arguing that if oh man, I forget your name. I'm sorry.
Mine?
No, Castro.
Carlos.
I'm sorry, Larry. I'm bad at that. If Carlos grows potatoes and I grow corn, and we exchange straight across, that is not capitalism.
No.
Carlos, hold on. Well, if Carlos sells his potatoes to the dark authoritarian, and I sell my potato or my corn to Modwain, and then we exchange money in some other fashion, that would be capitalism. The money is just a representation of goods.
Okay, well, I have like a little quarrel with saying that trading like a chicken for a cow or some other animal for another animal is not capitalism because it's not increasing value. I mean, what if somebody, say, who like sells cows for a living, breeds them and whatnot and sells them to other people?
That's different.
What if, I mean, he charges like one week he could be like charging one chicken for one bag of potatoes for a cow.
That is not barter.
But then the next week he could charge higher, like instead.
No, that's not how it works. I'll tell you how it works. I trade some fertilizer to your potatoes. I trade some fertilizer to your cows. I get the potatoes and the beef and make a pie and sell it back to you or sell it somewhere else. That is actual capitalism because I have produced something.
What if, say, within supply and demand, I do not value that fertilizer as much as my chicken? Or
you may not, but your neighbor will, and then I will trade from him.
Right.
Yeah, and a business down the road from the one cake shop could be charging a cheaper or different price for his cakes.
But he still needs exactly. That is basically it. That is what capitalism. You generate capital. You do not trade equal amounts. That is what has happened to 98%.
But if I wanted to trade 2 chickens instead of 1 for your bag of potatoes, wouldn't that mean that bag of potatoes
would I accept it though?
Value to me?
No, but you're still exchanging equal amount. If I accept it, I value your chicken, single chicken, for my whatever I sell as equal value. That is not capitalism. I am not generating capital. I'm just trading equal amounts.
I mean, if your strict definition of capital is money, like say,
no, it's not money. No, it's not money. It's worth. It's not even
value.
It's worth. Not, well, I don't understand why you need strictly like money to like reflect that worth off of a certain good. Like,
you don't need worth or wealth. It's capital. You increase
capital
the
and wealth
value.
are not the same thing.
Last analogy. I lived in Australia. This will be quick. I'll be really quick as we can. Australia has a hell of a lot of mineral wealth. It exports that mineral wealth, right, for X amount of dollars, but it imports manufactured items. Do you know what? Australia has a trade deficit because it is getting stuff that is worth more than it is exporting. That is what generating capital is all about.
No, not in the slightest.
No, completely. Because if you trade equally, it is not capitalism. You are not generating capital.
No such thing as trading equally. And to your original, whichever two.
Yes, there is.
The thing is, okay.
Let two plebs finish, man.
Yeah, I will.
Here's the deal. Let's go back to our two goods in our barter system, right? You grow corn, I grow chickens. And you go, I want chickens more than I want this corn. So for yourself, when you get those chickens from me for whatever we agree on is an equal value of corn and chickens, you want the chickens more than you want the corn, and I want the corn more than I want the chickens. Both of us have just generated value to ourselves, even if nobody else, because before we made this trade, you didn't have chickens and I didn't have corn. We wanted this enough that we said, well, I would rather not have the thing that I have that is equal to itself in value, and I would rather have that thing that you have. This is a barter system in which value is generated simply by making a trade.
No, it's not. It's just trading.
There's
no value generated. It's just trading what you agreed on the value. You did not generate, or I did not generate any value extra. I got the chickens. I did not transform them.
Yeah, but the chickens might have more value to you.
Okay.
No, that doesn't matter what you. If you think that you had more value to the chickens, but you could not get them to the value that you wanted, that's what bartering is. You haggle. You haggle.
Say if I was like raising sheep for lamb chops and whatnot, and I had like a sheep and he wasn't that fat, and I was like and somebody was willing to trade me one chicken for that one sheep. But if I fattened up that sheep a little bit more, like put more effort to put more value in it, so that as soon as a person like buys that sheep, they get more meat for their trade. As soon as I do put that effort in, I feel like I'm putting more value into that sheep. But and so therefore I would want 2 chickens instead of just 1 because of the effort that I put forward. But it doesn't mean that there is a currency involved. I mean, I'm still increasing value when I put work into fattening up the sheep, for example.
Now you're talking about a cost-benefit analysis, which
no, that is actually what you transformed a skinny sheep that was worth one chicken into a fat sheep that could have been worth 4 chickens.
This transformation does not matter to capitalism.
It does matter because primary materials are worth less than actually transformed materials because they gain value, they gain capital.
Oh, all right.
You cannot say that a iron ore is worth the same.
By all this, man.
No, it's easy. Iron ore is not the same worth as a fully made car.
Right. No. I also want to say that value is subjective because you will not value, or you won't value chicken as much as I will value chicken. For example, I mean, a person will like the taste and will just like the chicken more than me, and so will be willing to like trade a higher dollar for it.
But that's what capitalism does not involve human nature. It is a model, an economic model.
Well, it allows.
It does not matter what you feel, like science. What matters what it is actually. Remove the human element out of it. That's how it works. Where socialism, that's where the difference between capitalism and socialism. Socialism adds the human bullshit to it.
Okay, you mentioned feelings. Humans' subjective values is what determines capitalism and the value of the goods within a capitalist society.
Do you think an iPhone that's made for $10 in China is worth $900 in the United States?
Yes, because
no.
Okay, thank you. You just answered your own question.
That's my opinion, though. I mean,
it's everyone's okay. It's your opinion. It's my opinion as well.
I mean, in Canada, it'll be worth. In Canada, somebody will sell it for like I don't know, $1,000, like $100 higher.
That's true. That's currency trade. That's different. That's another aspect that we don't need to get into.
Well, no. I'm not talking about currency trade. I'm talking about the value of the knife that you brought up as an example. That was made in China.
I said an iPhone.
An iPhone. Excuse me. I thought I heard a knife. My bad. But
no
you said iPhone that was made for like $10 or
in China.
$10 is.
I said an arbitrary number, but it could be made for $50. Let's say it's made a pittance in China. Now, is it worth $900 in the West? Tell me, why is it sold for nearly $1,000 roundabout across the board thing? Why is it worth?
I will tell you. I will tell you straight up. 1, because that is the price the market will bear. 2, and I cannot say this enough, because that $10 cost of manufacturing discounts the entirety of the availability or of the requirements to make that phone. Right? This and it doesn't matter what number you throw out unless you're talking about some total cost of creating the phone before sales. Now, The premise here is that Apple, through whatever means, creates a phone out of whatever products they have bought from anywhere else. And they will sell that phone for a profit because people want it. And they will sell it for whatever profit they can get. And look, profit margins are tiny in basically every market. They're not whatever you think they are. And equally importantly, people...
I'm sorry, I have to disagree with that.
No, let him finish, all right. Let him finish, please. Let him finish.
Okay.
Go on, continue.
People will work for whatever value their work is for, right? It is a barter system. We have agreed that the thing that we barter with in general is money as opposed to products.
You have basically described what I've been saying since the start, except for the bartering of the people working for them. That does not apply. For example, in the United States, if Apple manufactured the iPhone in the United States, it would not cost $1,000.
No,
would it?
It would cost $5,000 at minimum.
Thank you. That is capitalism.
No.
Yes.
That is so far from anything to do with
it's generated the wealth. It's generated not the wealth. It's generated the capital. It got minerals and chemicals and made a product. The minerals and the chemicals and the actual labor that made that product is minuscule compared to what they sell it with, even with taxes, transportation, costs, everything involved. That is capitalism. It generates capital.
No.
Okay, I think we're getting kind of wound up in this semantics debate, honestly.
It's not semantics, it's logic. But anyway, authoritarianism, let's change the subject.
Let's go back to, because I'm not quite sure if Dark is done with what he wanted to say.
Okay, right. I mean, I did mention last week that I kind of, I thought this stream was going to be about, in part, of what we determine left versus right, economically and so on and so forth. And then I was trying to make the case that the more government intervention into the market there is, the more, or the more that you believe, the more that you personally believe in government intervention into the market, the more left-leaning you are. And then John was kind of, I don't know, I can't remember what exactly he was saying, but it seemed like he was arguing with that notion. My question to everybody here, what do you think? The more intervening into the market there is, the more left-leaning, or the more you believe in that anyways?
Well, so sorry, can I just answer your point? I wasn't quibbling with what you said about economics. I was quibbling with that being the sole arbiter of what it means to be left or right.
Oh, no. Of course not. I mean, there's many other contributing issues as well, like social issues and foreign policy as well.
At the moment, certainly in this country, which is the UK, if you raise any objection to unfettered immigration, you're suddenly far right. Nothing to do with economics whatsoever.
Well, I think everybody is not contributing in all the other factors and all the other beliefs of an individual.
I agree, and this is my problem, because it's like, okay, so I always thought left and right were essentially economic positions, but now then all the people who call themselves leftists, they're all the bloody intersectional people who.
What are the actions?
So what you're saying is that there is no objective standard as to what left versus right is.
Not anymore.
Right. Okay.
And that's the problem, because there are people who have long associated with the left who are saying, well, I don't feel any relationship to what is now identified as left, or have been positively ejected by the left. And yet they haven't changed position at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I answer?
How does that tie into economics, though?
Tying into economics. Nothing political, just economics. My belief, my position is the more government intervention in economics, the more God, left is not a term.
Well, okay, I want to also.
But I know what you mean. I'll accept your definition of left. Or most definition of left being more towards the socialist side of things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, let's not just like say just government intervention, because it also could be a mob rule via like say, for example, anarcho-communism, which I think is kind of a falsehood, kind of an oxymoron, anarcho-communism. But
no, it's not.
Here's the thing. Anarchy started as a left-wing philosophy.
Yeah, John's right. Communism, in its most purest form, socialism is anarchist. No rule, no hierarchy, no.
All right, I'm not taking into contribution of what socialism / communism was originally intended to be.
I'm talking about the 1870 Paris Commune, which was an anarchist organization of the city of Paris.
Exactly.
Which failed.
It got invaded by Prussia.
So basically, just going back to my point is, yes, the European Union has so many regulations on the economy. It is basically towards the socialist part, and it is stagnating the economy. While in a free market, where there's less government intervention, i.e., the United States, at this very point, at this point in time, it is growing because there are less regulations, so there's more freedom to generate capital.
You know what I find quite ridiculous when we're like defining what is left and right politics? What I find ridiculous is when people say that Barack Obama is a right winger.
Shit, Antifa. For Antifa, anyone right of Pol Pot or is a right winger. So
now I will give to leftists that Barack Obama is not the furthest left that left gets. Like arguably Bernie Sanders, Ocasio-Cortez are further left than him, and Owen would be even further left than Barack Obama.
Which Owen are we talking about?
Owen McDonald, and not Owen Jones or any other Owen out there in the world.
Shit, Owen Jones is the most. Owen Jones is the most left-wing, most socialist. Quote unquote left.
This is misunderstanding. They are bourgeoisie. They are not socialists.
I know, but they are LARPing for it, John.
Yeah,
we agree on
that.
Yes,
if they were socialists,
they would give me their iPhone.
Report that the social justice courses at American colleges
and
have the highest salaries of any courses at universities there.
Yes, exactly. They are LARPing. They are not real.
That is not a socialist philosophy. That is greed.
LARP? No, that is just...
So
these people are about as sincere. They're just not sincere. They have no principles.
So essentially, they would be more plutocrats than they are actual socialists.
No, they're authoritarians. They're authoritarians.
They're not even plutocrats. They're authoritarians.
They're authoritarians.
Authoritarians, yeah.
They're not interested in the rule of money, but they are interested in the rule of their ideology. Everyone who disagrees with their ideology must therefore be wrong, bad, and ostracized.
That's another thing.
In charge.
That's another thing in determining what is left versus right, because some people argue that when it comes to judging a person's political compass, that it isn't just purely linear. There's like a vertical and horizontal.
Yeah.
There's both a vertical and horizontal axis. But But when I hear somebody say that, even like just looking at Barack Obama's, just looking at his political beliefs, like ignoring his social beliefs and ignoring his military beliefs, because I think somebody could argue that he was fairly right-leaning when it comes to interventionism, but on social issues he would be left-leaning. But purely looking at it from an economic standpoint, the thing that people point out to say that he is a right winger is because he was for corporatism, or as we are defining it here, plutocracy. But that just seems silly because I find that to be a false dichotomy. But
but what's left wing about that?
What's left wing about plutocracy?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's purely left wing. I think
it
is centrist. I think it is economically centrist.
Well, I think it's not even centrist.
Plutocracy is not right leaning either. At least by the way.
No, it's authoritarian.
It's authoritarian. It's the whole goal is to be authoritarian.
Okay, well then I'll have to tell that to Cult of Ham, one of the people within my circle. The next time that he goes saying Obama was a right wing because he was for corporatism, no, that would put him more up on the authoritarian axis more than anything.
Well, the whole weird thing about all of this is that nobody is really left or right. We all have positions that are left or right or authoritarian or the other one. Yeah.
Well, there are some, but there are some, of course. There's the ideologues. You have them, Jesus. They're just too obvious. But that still is still subjective because each country or each, for example, I'll give you my example of Portugal. All of our political parties, I mean, from the most extreme, what you can say, most extreme right to the most extreme left, are basically centrists. They're right in the middle, not very far to the left, not very far to the right.
The same here, mate. In terms of how
in the UK, there's much more expansion of what I just said.
No. But in terms, if you look like Thatcher took the political consensus right. Blair went right with her. Now May is almost over towards Corbyn in many respects.
But they're extremes. They're not moderates. All of our politicians are moderates. They will pass laws. They have to pass all the European laws because we are fucking in the European Union. Yeah. But
I got
we
a question
pass
for you,
them. Can I just finish one more second, and I'll finish quickly. Portugal have to pass all our laws because we have to pass the European laws, but we don't really enforce them because we don't like authoritarianism. We had 70 years of that shit from 1926 to 1975. When we got our current constitution, and we don't give a shit about that. Our most rabid communists will not advocate for any social justice shit because they know the people who are still find politically incorrect jokes funny will not fucking vote for them.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Carl.
Even with the constant propaganda shit that's happening in our television.
Hey Carlos.
Yeah.
I just have one quick curious question. Like, do you live in Europe as well?
I'm in Portugal, man.
Oh, okay. Yep. For some reason, this whole time I thought you were like Hispanic American.
I'm not Hispanic. I'm Iberian Portuguese.
Okay. Excuse me.
I'll better define myself. I'm Celtic Portuguese. I'm not Iberian. I'm Celtic.
Excuse me for assuming right there. But...
No problems. I do not get triggered by you assuming my gender.
No, but Carlos, what you were saying, right?
Nationality, actually.
What you were saying?
Yes.
Back in the early 1980s, we had the fall of communism, and particularly the rise of solidarity in Poland.
That was the trigger. Yes.
Yeah. And I was at university during that, and it was a massive thing. Everybody, and I mean everybody, including all the far leftists, supported solidarity. They didn't support communism. They didn't support the government. They supported Solidarity.
I was as well, man. I was at university.
Yeah, and it is not the same today. But the left back then was anti-communism, as in the Soviet-style state-owned system. And this is what people today don't understand. They look at communism, they say, oh, it's communism because of the label. And it was always communism and the left were not the same thing.
Oh, I know. I know why.
And one of the reasons that changed, I think,
is the French, what's his name, that philosopher that basically made postmodernism.
Yeah, but that happened before.
Isn't it also poor education?
68. That was 1968. That's when it started.
Hey, isn't it also poor education on communism?
Oh, no.
Well, yeah, it is poor education on communism, but that's by intent. It's not accidental.
Yeah, I understand, but it's still poor education.
Like I said, everything's linked.
That's what the Frankfurt School of Thought's whole idea was. The whole
then embedded by the French postmodern philosophers, those fucking idiots.
Yeah. And that's basically that's why I find it so interesting that so many people do know that they don't like corporatism, but they don't know what a plutocracy is.
That's why what absolutely freaks me out and confuses me is all these left-leaning idiots are actually apologizing for a multi-billion-dollar corporation when it silences one of their enemies. Oh, they are good. What the fuck? I am the time when the most respectable communist would say, "Fuck off, you corporate shit." What?
Yeah, exactly.
Seriously, they're the useful idiots.
And now they're claiming to be left wing, and then they're supporting that shit.
You have billionaires funding left-wing organizations and Islamic organizations, which are fucking Islamic organizations, are basically right-wing by every definition of the term. They are super conservative. If you say right-wing is conservative.
Right and left are totally abstract, and we can't define it. They must be authoritarian.
Exactly, but let's call them. Exactly. I agree with you, man. Yeah, exactly. So they are funding those. They are funding NGOs that they are funding the media which are quote unquote the most socialist leaning to attack any form of dissent to the line. What the fuck does that create? Instability in the society. And when instability of society happens, with not applying laws as they equally, excusing some crimes but not others, it creates instability in our societies. And what does that mean? The people then clamor for an authoritarian figure to keep them safe.
Could you imagine if they applied the same laws to famous and rich people as the common pleb?
No, they don't. But they are the people, the 99% of the people don't feel safe at the moment in the West.
Yep. But
they will give up their freedom. That's happened before. They will give up their freedom to feel safe. And then what happens? 1930s redux.
Yep. Well, 1920s actually.
Yeah, well, it started after the 29 World Stock Depression.
No. It started in Italy after the First World War, I think 1917, 1919.
In Portugal, yeah, but some went authoritarian left, some went authoritarian right. Yes,
well, in Italy, you had the creation of fascism because of that.
And in Portugal.
Yeah, indeed.
1926, when Portugal was completely, they'd killed the king 10 years earlier, or they'd become a republic. We were flat broke. I mean, we were worse than Greece are at the moment. Mm-hmm. And there was a military coup. They set up a military dictatorship, except that the military were not economics. So what they did, they invited their most brilliant, one of the most brilliant economic professors in Portugal, Antonio de Oliveira Salazar. Come and balance our books. That's when it becomes.
I have some that I want to address in the chat right here from Alicia Clegg. I'm going to bow out. Good luck, my friends. Remember, Merriam Dictionary said that conservative is a synonym for racist. No, I just searched up the definition right here in front of me, and it says nothing about race in it.
I think she was being a little sarcastic.
No,
she's awesome. She's brilliant. I love her. She really is brilliant.
All right, my bad. Sorry for ruining the joke. Typical DarkCon.
She is awesome. She is one of my. I admire her so much. She's awesome. So I'm sure she was being sarcastic.
Yeah.
I'll ask her.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how what's happening basically now. We are repeating that early 20th century, and it's all linked. Who will win after all this zero-sum game is played out? Who will win?
I mean, it's not played out because there are still people who believe economics is a zero-sum game. They simply do not understand that 100 years ago, all the bakers in the world could only make 10 pies, for example. And all the bakers in the world now can make roughly 100 pies with roughly the same work.
No, I know your analogy. You got it slightly wrong. You said 10 bakers could make 100 pies. Now one baker could make
all the bakers could make 10 pies. Now all the bakers can make 100 pies.
Now one baker can make all the pies.
Well, yeah, that too. But it's not a zero-sum game. It's not as if that's the thing, though. I mean, oh no, the world is too small. What if we run out of materials? Yeah, we're not running out of materials. Yeah, but we'll run out of food. We're not running out of food. There is plenty of room to grow food.
Yes.
We don't do it in the right way, but that's not the problem. There is plenty of food. Yeah, but what if we run out of water? We do not run out of water. All these things are there.
Yes. Yeah, but the only thing I can say is they are ultimately finite. At some point...
Well, not really.
No. Seriously,
yes.
At some point, you have to stop expanding. And I'm not saying we're anywhere near that. I'm just saying that technically, we live on a finite planet.
But only by population.
Even that, John, is worth discussing. Because, for example, farming. We always thought farming would deliver a certain amount of food, period. But we've seen increase in farms ever since, in farming output ever since. Well, what makes it that we see increase in output? Well, one of the reasons we see increase in output is because
GMOs.
Sorry?
GMOs.
No.
Yes, but that's not the main thing. That's not the main thing. The main reason why we see an expense is because in invention. No, not invention. The other word.
Innovation.
Innovation. Thank you. By that very innovation, people are talking about eating algae from the sea. 10 years ago, only in Japan they talked about that. Now the whole world talks about it. We can. We don't have to, but we can.
Can I just do a 3-second intervention about our geography when I was a student at high school? It's funny. I was taught then in geography that society passes through phases. You have the phase where the people there's a high mortality rate, so the people produce many children, and then as wealth grows, this is wealth, not capital. This is actual wealth, and you leave the poverty, say wealth, medicine, etc., or technology. It makes people survive more, so they have less children, until we get to what is now Western societies. We are actually not producing enough children to maintain our population. Every population passes through this. The Western world passed that in the late 17th to 20th century. until penicillin was discovered, basically. Antibiotics. Now the West has stopped reproducing in the numbers, and that phase is why we call the first world. The second world are the countries which are still producing too many kids, but they are surviving more. Now they soon will be getting to the phase where they have enough wealth that having children will be too expensive for them to have children, so they will stop having children. The third world will catch up to the second, etc. It's a fact that capitalism, the economic model, has allowed people to escape extreme poverty. No matter what statistics to use, proportionately, we are much better off. Not absolutist. Like I saw this video with Steven Pinker and some idiot in England interviewing him. Proportionately, we are 7 billion people. Proportion to those 7 billion people, we have less people in poverty than we did 100 years ago. Well, that is what capitalism is good for.
We are absolutely better off. You're not wrong, except for the part where you said we're not absolutely better off, because in those 100 years, we have redefined poverty to mean new things so that we can keep a list of people under the term poverty.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you in that aspect, but it's still, no matter what redefinition you use, the most poorest person on earth is still getting enough food that the most poorest person on earth 100 years ago, not just food, medicine, education, everything.
Well,
yes,
in the West, let's say in the West.
Proportionately, even in Burkina Faso, that's the country that I just remember now. I love using that example. In Central Africa, they are better now than they were 100 years ago, right, when they were under colonial rule, for example. And they're possibly fighting civil wars and ethnic tensions and all that shit. But they are still, in general, proportionately better off.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is you're describing them being absolutely better off.
Exactly, that's what I mean. It's not absolutist better off. It's proportionately better off. No, we have proportionately fewer poor people. Now I'm stressing proportionately.
And I'm stressing absolutely, because if you have to define poor,
but absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Go on.
Simply by having changed the definition, you are saying absolutely to be poor in even extreme poverty, you are better off than extreme poverty was yesterday, because I have now changed the definition of extreme poverty to mean better than what it was yesterday. Therefore, absolutely, everyone is better off.
Okay, I'll give you why. Remove penicillin, or no, remove antibiotics, remove modern farming, remove modern trade, remove modern
sanitation.
For example, yes, all of those from the equation. Are we better off or worse off, or equally as we were 100 years ago?
That would be an irrelevancy, because we
No, that's the fact. That's not irrelevance. That is relevant.
Could you let me finish the sentence?
Okay, go on. Sorry about that, man. Sorry, I apologize.
Not just me.
That is an irrelevancy, because we have those things. And now to have redefined extreme poverty to mean anything to do with those things means that the prior definition of extreme poverty was worse. Therefore, absolutely, everyone is better off, because we have needed to redefine the worst of the worst to be better than it was yesterday.
You know, I just want to point out. I just want to point out that something that I've been noticing is that everybody here gets worked up kind of easily. I do not know if that's because y'all are older than me or something.
No, we're just having fun.
We're just having fun and passionate.
I thought it was the age
No, we're not
being
serious.
y'all old farts.
No, this is what having fun is, man. We do not take this seriously or personal.
Have a drink and a heated argument.
Exactly. You will live longer.
I don't think anybody here is walking away in any way absolutely angrily hating someone. Like,
oh no.
No, we're all good mates.
Personally, absolutely not. I love these awesome heated discussions.
Yeah.
Right.
God damn it, I live for them.
But yeah, I think there is a certain personality that is that go balls to the wall and then let's go get a beer.
Exactly, man.
I mean, what happens to a society when people cannot disagree anymore?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're seeing that right now.
We are seeing that right now.
Unfortunately,
this is what we're seeing in Western Europe is Moustopia in the big.
Except this shithole little country that we are called Portugal, which we are so fucking obnoxious.
Did you just call your own country a shithole? You are self-hating racist.
No, absolutely. That's why Portugal is the best country on earth, because we are the biggest shithole on earth.
My other Portuguese friend, I discussed this with her, and she's like, "Man, we get told all this SJW crap in school as well." University.
But we don't give a shit. No, they don't teach them in the university. Do you know why? Because the university teachers have they lecture in about 3 universities. They just want the fucking money. They don't have time to.
Well, that's your word versus her word.
No, mostly. I said mostly. Because my daughter and my son went to university. Many of my friends are at university.
Yeah, she's in there now. So.
No, they do that in political science, gender studies. We have that here, but that's limited to them. Those subjects. It's not expanded.
There's no one,
There's no crossover.
No, because there's no money in it. The university teachers, they're teachers in themselves. I worked at a school for 10 years.
Dude, do you see that shit that Hungary wanted to ban social justice shit?
And I'm 100% agreeing with them.
So do I, mate. Basket weaving courses have no place in academia. I'm
they
sorry.
Don't have any. No,
that's trade school.
That's
not even that.
Yep.
If they want philosophy, let them make universities just for philosophy, which is another bullshit course. Jesus. No.
I have a question, by the way.
Not too sure about that. But.
No, mate, no. I can think of a lot of things. Go on, Smokers. Sorry about that.
No, Darkon.
Or Darkon. Go on, man. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry. I don't have an accent. I got that hillbilly Peckerwood accent right here amongst. Well, okay, Two Plebs does as well. Anyway, speaking of Peckerwoods, what's the name of that one Riddler with a fedora guy that visited on last week? I'm curious about his channel, honestly.
I can't remember who was here last week.
I think I missed last week.
The guy with the question mark on his face.
Nobody.
Nobody. Thick piss boy.
Nobody is awesome, man. Nobody is awesome.
Nobody's a great dude.
He's a great dude. He's awesome.
Yep. Why isn't he here anyway? Get in here.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, but he's not. But he's awesome. He's something. Nobody. Yeah, nobody.
Nobody. That's his name. Nobody.
That's the name he goes by.
It's nobody or something.
I'll link his channel for you.
Oh, thank you, because I was looking for it. But if you found it,
I triggered him today. I actually triggered him today. I almost made him choose between two great AC/DC albums.
Ramblings of Nobody, that's his channel name.
There's only one. Yeah. Let There Be Rock.
No, it's
Let There Be Rock, and I'll link it in the stream.
Let There Be Rock.
No, they are all good.
No, Let There Be Rock.
Highway to Hell is
Let There Be Rock. Sorry, no arguments.
I do not know all the albums by name, but I can tell you one of my top favorite songs from them would For Those About to Rock.
back.
Oh, that's from.
It's a hard way to. It's a hard way to. If you want to rock and roll.
We salute you.
There's so many, man. There's no. I will. Like he
let
said,
there be rock.
I will.
Simple, no arguments.
I will tell you what he wrote, and I am completely in agreement. You can't make me choose demon. There you go.
Okay, the ramblings of a nobody. That's what his name is.
He's a great dude.
We so easily get sidetracked all the time, bro.
He's
I can't
awesome,
even remember what this thing was about.
I know you.
So today's topic was about economics and totalitarian versus individuality.
We sort of covered it. We sort of covered it.
Yeah, we got sidetracked by me asking about the nobody.
Yeah,
exactly. That's your fault. That's your fault.
This is your final warning,
dude. We got sidetracked so long ago.
Don't pin it on the American libertarian reaper here.
No, sir. We talk about individualism here, and you will fall in line, or you will be banned.
Exactly.
Dare ban me, I will hunt down your soul and burn it alive.
What makes you assume I still have a soul? Come on, man.
You sold it a long time ago, man.
Are you assuming my
I guess I'll have to.
That's not gender. What do you call that? Yeah.
I guess I'll have to have a little talk with the devil then.
Having soul or not having soul. How
I'm
can you
talking
say
for you
that?
now. Isn't that enough?
See,
Oh, I am
if you have anything of value for Modwain's soul.
Yeah. It's like that cartoon about Hillary Clinton. Oh, you promised me I would win the election. Yeah, you promised me you had a soul.
Yeah, she hasn't.
I am mortally challenged.
Mortally challenged. Oh my god.
Yeah,
I love that demo. I've seen that demo. It is just brilliant.
Yeah.
I am mortally disabled. Now give me money.
I'm going to buy that. I am actually going to buy the game complete. Whatever it's gonna. It is just fucking brilliant.
It's probably going to be solved really good.
That is brilliant. Oh God! Oh,
I see Alicia is back. Real Raven is there too, guys. If you want to join,
come in, guys. I'm here till 1 a.m. or more because I'm on holidays.
Sweet. Yeah. Let's get back to topic.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's talk about. Actually, in all fairness, I'm not sure if there is still anything that we haven't mentioned yet. To be honest.
Well, we can just talk about authoritarianism and economic authoritarianism.
Because if covered left and right economics.
No.
That's a problem because, like in a country like the UK, there wasn't that big a difference economically. The difference arose in other areas.
I can tell you a difference.
Wait. I got a question to that. Are you saying there is not much variance to the economic beliefs of the overall populace of the UK, John?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there was a consensus from the 50s until the 80s, a Keynesian consensus. And the constraints posed by the existing reality meant that there wasn't a lot of difference between what Conservative governments did and what Labour governments did.
All you're describing,
economically speaking, at least.
Yeah. Conservatives, Conservatives nationalised stuff, like the railways.
Okay, so on things like minimum wage, overall
there wasn't a minimum wage back then.
Actually, minimum wage, that's another great story to go on, to be honest. You know who benefits from a minimum wage system?
The rich, I mean, because it kind of cripples the small business, thus giving less competition for the big corporations. I mean, I even heard generally spoken that... what?
You hit the nail right on the head. The difference between authoritarianism economics and individualistic economics. It's happening in Europe.
A high high minimum wage is only interesting for the wealthy, the super rich or the rich, because if I now take out a loan of 100,000, then you inflate the money. My 100,000 becomes less valuable, but everything I bought with that 100,000 before the money devaluated means that I still have the value, but I have to pay less.
Well, that's one point, but I also have another point. Who's hurt more by having a minimum wage? Say, let's give the American minimum wage of $15 an hour.
It's not yet $15 an hour. It's like still $7.25, $7.50.
I know. I'm giving that example in the democratic states like New York, Nevada. Those places.
I don't even know if it's statewide that they have like a $15 minimum wage.
Oregon has it. Oregon, Washington, New York, and a few other places.
I think it's Seattle more than the entire state of Washington. I'll have to like Google that up right now.
But anyway, yeah, it doesn't matter. Just let me put my point. Then you have all the what $15 an hour. That's my number. It's just an arbitrary number. Who does it hurt more? It hurts the small companies. That shop in New York, that coffee shop in New York that Ocasio-Cortez worked at was forced to close because New York installed the $15 minimum wage. And who benefits more? Starbucks, because they are a huge conglomeration. They can.
I just want to point out very quickly.
Let me just finish, man. One. I'll be really, really quick. $15 an hour. The huge corporations, they can dilute the cost into their organization, so they can offer the same price coffees consistently. A small coffee shop cannot. That is what's happening in Europe. Small businesses cannot compete because of that. Not just minimum wage, but other regulations that huge corporations can absorb easily. Be they super unrealistic health norms. You have to use this chemical that costs about $50 a liter, or so on, and you have to use it regularly, where they have to spend about 500 euros a month to sanitize their small bathroom, compared to huge conglomerations which dilute their costs into their whole system. That is authoritarianism.
I also want to point out that the entire statewide minimum wage of Washington is actually $11 per hour, and for Seattle, it's not even $15 an hour yet. It's going to be $15 per hour for all workers by 2021 in Seattle. So
it still doesn't. My point's still valid.
No. I'm not trying to like refute your point.
No. You are adding.
I'm just trying to correct that little factoid. Is all that I'm trying to do.
But it's still adding. You're just adding to my point. I understand. Yes.
And it actually comes from an article that I'm gonna have to like save for later. It says Seattle's $15 minimum wage may be hurting workers. Report says.
Of course it does, because
maybe
it won't hurt Starbucks, but it'll hurt the coffee shop at the corner, which is a family owned. It has about 7 or 8 employees. They'll have to get rid of 5 of them to just maintain the profit, or not profit, just maintain minimum costs. You see that.
Prices or reserve value, or call it whatever you want, but there is an economic principle at play here that matters, and it does hurt Starbucks. It's not enough that it causes them the problems that causes small business. Look, you are right. There is a regulatory burden that larger companies can absorb that smaller companies can't, but most of that relates to liability things, because you can diffuse lawyerly costs over the course of a whole corporation. But diffusing minimum wage is much different and much more difficult. But regardless, there's a principle in economics called preserved value, and I'm going to try and make this as simple as possible. Basically, the way it works is on the coffee shop discussion, how much would you pay for one cup of coffee? I mean, if you just had to throw out a number right now, what would it be?
$1.
I pay 60 at the cheapest place for an espresso. I pay 60 cents, 60 euro cents.
So that sounds pretty close to $1 based on.
It's actually 75 cents.
All right. So between the two, we've got what is that, about 85 cents, right? Somewhere in there. Can we call it nice middle ground? All right. So that's your first cup of coffee. You're willing to pay. How much would you pay for your second cup of coffee? I mean,
I didn't hear that, man. Sorry, could you repeat it?
I wouldn't pay more for my second cup of coffee than my first cup of coffee. Fuck
exactly.
That.
Yeah.
So you're not going to pay more. You probably, I mean, you've already had coffee, and maybe you want a second cup, but you definitely don't want it as much as the first one. So ideally, you started out at 85 cents. To make this faster, I'm going to say at the next one you want to pay 75 cents. Like that's if you really didn't, it didn't really matter or whatever. So like, yeah, I'd like another one, and if they said a second cup for 75 cents, I'd probably take that. Well then,
but we don't pay. The coffee here is the same price at it varies between 60 cents, which is one coffee shop, one cafe, to 65 cents in another one. If I go to Lisbon, it is €1. If I go to Spain, it is €1.
None of this matters. They all have already gone through this, right?
Yeah, but do you know how many employees that coffee shop has?
That is completely irrelevant.
It is not completely irrelevant. It has one employee. There is a couple that own that are exploring the shop, and they can only afford one employee.
That is completely irrelevant to reserve pricing.
It's not because really. You have to add the price of the coffee plus the price of what you pay your employees to the final price of the coffee shop, the coffee that you sell. Starbucks can afford to dilute the price of $15 per hour employees to its coffee. But if you are a family, a small business, which you probably had, like Ocasio-Cortez's coffee shop, where she earned, they had 15 or 16 employees. They have had to close down because they just cannot afford the $15 minimum wage.
Are you intentionally missing the point of what I'm saying, or trying to overcomplicate it?
I probably didn't hear it well because you're sort of.
You're a bit mumbled again.
Yep.
Well, so here's what I'll do. Am I better now?
Maybe
move closer to the mic, maybe.
Yeah. A little bit, but hey, can we hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, here's the deal. So this has already happened in every single cup of coffee that you actually buy. I know that because this always happens every single time, everywhere that any product is sold. Reserve pricing is the thing that guides the price in your local area, right? And I will explain in a minute why this means the coffee shop has to close, right? So here's the deal. For your second cup of coffee, you're willing to pay 75 cents, right? For your first one, you paid your 85 cents. The second one, you would take one at 75 cents, but if it was 85 cents, you might not want it, right? And what is it you'd be willing to pay for the third one? You already had 2 cups of coffee, so are you really willing to pay 75 cents for that third cup? Probably be happier at 50 cents, right? Like, well, I mean, the third one's 50 cents. Hell with it. That is the reserve price, that third layer. And this has already happened. So the reserve price of your coffee, wherever it is that you live, is your 85 cents, right? So someone did this originally, and they started with $5, and they went down to 85 cents. And they went, all right, we could probably sell a cup of coffee for $5, but only one. But if we could get repeat business out of you, what would we have to sell it at? And they ended at 85 cents, right? And that's why that's what they charge. Whether they know it or not, that is what happened. Now, can you fit the cost of a business into that reserve price? And the answer depends on whether is the sole factor in whether or not you close the doors. Because while Starbucks can diffuse that cost against the reserve price in a whole city, Bob's Coffee Shop cannot. Right? Furthermore, though, when you take Bob's Coffee Shop out of existence, because the minimum wage is $15 an hour, and he can't diffuse that price, quantity of money in the economy goes up, and so or the amount of money in individual pockets goes up, and so too does the reserve price. Because people go, well, now I have more money. I would be willing to pay $5 instead of $1, $4 for $1. However, you have to survive the initial jump. And this is what corporations are good at doing that small coffee shops are not. The small coffee shop cannot take the initial hit or to raise the price, whereas Starbucks can.
You're assuming a whole lot of things here.
I'm assuming precisely zero. This is economic fact, and it has been for 100 years.
No, you're assuming
not
that
when you start talking about minimum
if
wage.
you raise the minimum wage of a company, not a corporation, but a small company, that they will maintain employees. No, they will lose employees. Therefore, they will raise that state or city or county will have a higher unemployment problem. So therefore, they will not generate as much revenue, wealth, capital, whatever you want to call it, right? So if you maintain, therefore, if you cannot afford to pay 85 cents for a coffee, you will not buy the 85 cents for a coffee.
You're into very different economic principles here.
No, that's the economic principles of what regulation is and what authoritarianism versus individualism is, of what this stream was supposed to be about. The minimum wage of places, that's why it caused the coffee shop raising the only thing that happened was raising the minimum wage in New York. Everything else stayed the same. And where she worked, I'll share the screen from reasons to show you that I like presenting facts here. If someone share them, I'll share them here. That's the only thing that changed in that coffee shop. New York raising the minimum wage, basically.
Yes, and then they could no longer fit the cost into the reserve price.
Exactly, because they could not raise the price. If they raised the price, they would still not sell. So therefore, they would have to firstly get rid of employees, raising the unemployment.
You're not arguing with me.
No, we are sort of agreeing with each other.
Here is the thing: you're talking about this takes people out of the market, and that is going to mean less sales. And you're correct. Right.
Exactly. That means that it's becoming more authoritarian in itself, less individualistic, because a small coffee shop is an individualistic capitalist model.
We're getting away from economics.
No. I'm not getting away. I'm actually maintaining what I'm saying. This small shop,
nothing to do with economics, right?
It is all to do with economics.
You can impose things, and economics will tell you what will happen with that. It is just a view.
It'll just mean that the bigger the company is, that they already can afford, or they just for a small period of time reduce their margin of profits, but then they just later on, when they see the opportunity, mass fire people or reduce their wages. Well, they can't reduce their wages, so they just reduce the amount of people they employ.
Sure, but again,
and perhaps automate things to make it easier.
Exactly, to the point. Exactly. Thank you, Smirkers. They are now in the United States beginning to automate. They've started with shopping grocery stores where they don't even have employees. You fucking pass your groceries and without no one being there.
And what is this all to do?
With the authoritarian economic policies regulation instead of the market capitalist system.
None of that Like, look, you're not wrong. They are authoritarian.
Exactly. I don't know. Honestly, I'm talking about my assertion here. I bet someone that does not live in a minimum wage state at the end of the month makes much more money than the people who live in a minimum wage, quote unquote, state. Do you see what I mean? Through tips. Just through tips.
So, but you're talking about relative economies one to another. None of this is in the original form. Why are they?
These places have? Do the Starbucks does not have tips?
Yes, they do. Every Starbucks.
And do you think that people leave tips in the corporations like they do in small businesses? I highly doubt that.
Well,
I don't see anyone leaving tips in McDonald's.
McDonald's doesn't have a tip jar. In fact, they have corporate policy.
Starbucks has a tip jar?
Yes.
Well, they are probably the only ones. That I thank you for elucidating that to me. I did not know. Thank you. I am learning all the time. But they are still a
Netherlands, they don't have a tip box at McDonald's.
You want that?
That in the Netherlands they don't have a tip box in McDonald's. You can donate for the Ronald McDonald's house, but that's about it.
That's different. That's different. That doesn't go to the employees like a tip jar does. Does the tip jar in Starbucks go to the employees at that branch of Starbucks in a minimum $15 an hour state like Seattle City?
Yes.
Or New York?
So does it? Depends on where you are and what their personal.
I'm talking about Seattle, the places, the cities that have a minimum wage of $15 an hour at the moment.
Nobody about at the moment. 15 an hour, as we just discussed. But I live in California, so we are doing the exact same thing as Seattle, right?
Exactly.
Guys, we're going in circles. We've basically heard everything once before. So let's look at what raising the minimum wage actually does. I mean, the minimum wage has been raised before. What does the raising of minimum wage actually accomplish?
Causes inflation.
Inflation. It causes inflation. But will it actually increase the stature of life for those people who have raised minimum wage? Or will it lower it?
Probably not.
Portugal, just a quick this is probably my last thing. Portugal has a minimum wage system. We have a minimum wage of 595 euros. Everything he pays that, basically. And then there are categories which multiply off that base. I earn 1.5% of that. I earn basically double that. Because I'm a superior technician. My position allows me to that. But my wife used to work at a restaurant. She was paid the minimum wage, and she worked from 9 a.m. in the morning to 1 a.m. in the night. And that's all they paid. Now, if you did not have a minimum wage system, do you know what that restaurant where she worked would need to pay people to actually work there, or else they'd close their doors. So they would not pay the minimum wage. They'd have to pay more than the minimum wage.
Or whatever people decide to work for.
Exactly.
Well, yeah. But that's the thing. You do not force an increase in minimum wage, because if you do that, you're basically telling every corporation out there, we're going to devaluate the money for what we think it's worth. And
all right, you told about that with the example of owning houses. That your loan actually gets cheaper.
That's the thing. I mean, if I look at it, if we look in the Netherlands, the value of the euro has decreased. It hasn't decreased by huge amounts, but it has decreased. I'm still paying a mortgage on a house, and I pay for my mortgage less than my brother pays in rent for a house that's nearly a quarter the size of my house.
Oh man, we're so far away from minimum wage. But can I answer the original question? Does the standard of living go up when you raise minimum wage for people who make minimum wage?
No.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah, it does. Now,
no, it doesn't.
How does it? Okay, no. First off, how does it increase that?
Here's the deal, right? So none of you are wrong. Yes, an outcome of this is inflation, right? And so that devalues the currency, but it never devalues it quite as much as the minimum wage. No. And it's usually somewhat, but it never equals. However, what it does do, and this is part of why, is it promotes more work out of less people, or how go with automation, go with whatever you want, right? I need someone who will actually now give me the $15 worth of labor out of them per hour. Now, for the people who retain their jobs when minimum wage goes up, their standard of living goes up some, not very much, incrementally, yes, because the currency devalues, it does it relatively quickly. However, the people that really get hurt here are the ones who can no longer provide that value of service with their labor. So, as long as what you have is a majority of people, or a greater quantity in the world of financial politics, making minimum wage or something relatively close, then not. What you get is people getting a slightly, incrementally better life. And I am not saying this is in any huge way. You don't suddenly become, like a palace owner because minimum wage went up. However, your life, if you retain your job through this, maybe you can buy, I don't know, something small over the course of a year. That's the incremental quantity we're talking after the prices catch up to the change in minimum wage. However, if you are making minimum wage, you are some small amount better off for having minimum wage go up than you were before it did. Everyone who is not making exactly minimum wage gets screwed, right? Because if you were previously making minimum wage 10%, you are, that minimum wage increase. Am I really okay? Yeah. My mic is elevated. All right. So if you're making minimum wage plus 10%, and the cost of everything went up, but you probably didn't get covered in the minimum wage chunk, right? So
I disagree with your statement, with your analysis. Do you know why? Just simple things. You don't increase your wealth or whatever because of the minimum wage. In fact, you get then charged more taxes proportionately through the minimum wage increase. Do you know what increases your wealth? And that is when they cut your taxes.
Well, so cutting taxes would definitively be a better answer, and is not.
It's happened in the United States. The orange one cut taxes across the board. 80% of people, including the fucking 0.00001% that everyone's concentrating on, they've cut their taxes. They've cut their tax rate, so they have more money to spend. If you just increase your minimum wage, but you do not touch your tax bracket, do you know what happens? You go up one tax bracket where you charged more.
So I don't know how taxes work in your country, but that is actually
no. It's not in my country. I've had the Australian tax. I've been under the Australian tax system, the Portuguese tax system, and I know the American tax system.
Lots of personal experience, of which that's fine. That doesn't change all of economics.
But it does, because proportionately you will get less if you earn more if you do not change your tax system. Trump cut the rates. Trump, the orange idiot, cut the rates. So people are getting more at the final, their paycheck. Add that to the minimum wage, $15 a month, $15 an hour, multiply that by the month, then you apply the tax rate that Trump has now, you will be getting more, obviously, than if he did not do that.
You're arguing two different things and comparing them when they're very...
If he did not apply the tax cut rates, the $15 per hour would be useless, because they would move up a tax bracket.
You know how that works?
It works because you're getting more money. That's the tax system that you guys have, that Portugal has, that Australia has.
It does depend on how high the tax bracket cutoffs are.
Exactly, but
if it's $15 an hour and you're still within that tax bracket, nothing fucking happens. Now,
my tax bracket, I meant the minimum is still. I'll tell you, I earn €1,000 a month.
Or am I wrong in that?
No, I'll give you details of what I'm earning. I earn roughly €1,000 a month, right?
You're missing a very important part in this whole story.
Well, I'm gonna miss this point.
The thing is not so much that you're getting in a higher tax bracket, but the thing is, by creating inflation, life becomes more expensive.
That's where I was leading to, Modwain. You were so ahead of me, man.
Getting there.
No, you think exactly like me, man. That's why I love you. I was getting to that.
Except Modwain does it in like 2 seconds, and you make it a personal story.
No. I have to. I, as a scientist, have to give examples. I could say, look, I earn this, I pay that, and that's it. No. I have to give examples. I follow the scientific method. I remove me from the data set, and it'll still be correct. So, getting back to, I've just.
I'm
sorry to plebs, you're breaking up again. But
just one more minute, 30 more seconds, and I'll finish my point. I earn €1,000 a month, right? That's about 16,000 with bonuses and all that shit. It's about €15,000 a month per year. So I am in the low bracket. I can earn to €25,000 per year, and I will pay the minimum. Once I get to 26,001 cents per year, I get into a higher bracket. That is what brackets mean. See what I mean? Do you see my point? Minimum wage. My salary is calculated on the minimum wage, which is €596.
I don't know how you are not providing a mutually exclusive point. You are saying, but this other thing also matters, and therefore that's all that matters. And it is not all that matters.
But if they raise the minimum wage, that'll impact me. It'll raise inflation.
If you get to that 2,600,
and then they will have to later on raise my wage again to counteract the inflation, which will go back to inflation rising, etc. It's a never-ending cycle. Do not rage.
It is a never-ending cycle, which will always hurt the people at the bottom. For example, two plebs. Are you owning your house or are you renting your house?
I rent.
Okay. Is the rent going up yearly, annually, or is it set?
It goes up annually.
Okay. Based on what does your rent go up?
Basically, whatever they can convince you to pay every year.
Hence, inflation. Because you're paying more money, but you're not getting an inherently better house.
And what did I say from the jump? Your lifestyle increases some if you make precisely minimum wage. It screws everyone else, including the people who lose their jobs.
Okay, I understand this part. One moment. Let me continue the story I'm thinking, or the reason why I come here. The reason why the rent is being increased is not just because they have a reason to do so, but they can get away with it. And by that cause, you will always be in a negative situation. And therefore, you will always need more inflation. And because of that more inflation, you will always run out of money. Now, for example, if I would have...
Well, hold on. Right. So there's a thing that happens here on a semi-regular basis, which is to say the rent market collapses. Now, that has a lot to do with the real estate market, right, what it's doing. So if it becomes a massive buyer's market, everyone is selling their house, the rent market immediately collapses, right? Because As soon as it becomes eminently cheaper to buy a house than rent one, rent needs to go down or those rental properties stay open. So it's better to make less money than no money. This inherently is contradictory to the idea that rent will always rise.
Okay, let me come back to my story then, and then we look at it from your point of view. You're renting a house. Rent continues up until, for whatever reason, people cannot afford their rent anymore. And then the rent bubble more or less collapses. And then what happens, do you think? Do you think the rents will go down?
Yes.
Okay, but that doesn't always happen.
Not mine, because I'll be in a contract. So at least until I renew it, my rent will
Yeah, but that's the whole point. But even if you do not renew it, yeah, you can't afford your rent, so you'll be moved out of your house. But it's not likely that you already have another house. Because there are only so many houses on the market, right?
It completely removes the ability to negotiate with my landlord, right? So and by the way,
I'm not removing anything. I mean, I'm merely saying, because now you already have no ability to negotiate with your landlord.
Sure I do. Every time I renew the contract.
Fair enough. But you need a house.
This is
so you're negotiating from a position of weakness.
No, you're not, right? And so this is exactly how I ended up in the house that I'm in, right? I used to live in a fairly small apartment, and now I live in a nearly 2,000 square foot house, right? And the rental market here exploded and went crazy because it's California, and we do a lot of things to try and force that to happen until it does. And so when I lived in the apartment, my apartment manager came to me when my lease was up and said, we're going to give you, or we're only going to offer you, it was about 150% what I was paying for, right? So I was paying like $1,100 and they wanted to make it $1,600 a month. And I said, for $1,600 a month, I can rent a house. So either that comes down or I move, right? And it was my negotiating point, and they said, okay, then move. And I said, okay. And I took a house for roughly the same amount of money that I was paying for that apartment.
Fair enough.
Every time that my lease is renewed here, I have the same conversation with my landlord here, which is to say, you want to raise the rent? Freaking money. I'm going to go.
You're missing the point. The point is that you have to renegotiate the price for your house time and again, and that negotiation is partly based on what the average is willing to pay.
Sure.
So if your landlord seriously doesn't care about you and seriously feels like, okay, you know what, I want 4% and I'm going to get 4%, whether it's from you or someone else, you're fucked.
No, right? Because they're back to reserve pricing, right? If my landlord decided to quadruple my rent, and every landlord in the area decided to do that.
I'm not saying quadruple, I'm saying 4%.
Whatever it is, right? It doesn't.
No, the difference is very important, because what you're saying is a huge difference, and what I'm saying is an incremental difference.
It doesn't matter.
4% is only 4/10. And compared
in
to
the
4
example,
times,
it doesn't really matter.
It does a lot.
It is
Actually, it does. It doesn't matter, because you're willing. You're able
to tell you why it doesn't matter.
No, it does, because you are able to renegotiate, but you're not able to claim that you have to stay.
Do you know why it matters 4% four times? I earn €1,000 a month. If they give me
for the
4%,
example, if it's 4% or 4 times, it doesn't matter.
It matters. If they give me 4%, let me finish.
It's about an increase. Doesn't matter what the fucking increase is.
It means a lot. 4% is only 1,040.
In real world example, maybe, but for this example,
4 times is 4,000.
Let's continue with the example. Let's continue with the example as two plebs want to bring it in. Go on.
Fine. It's 4%. All right. So everybody in the local economy says we're going to increase the rent by 4% instead of whatever, right? And the local economy cannot bear this cost, right? So we're back to reserve pricing. So if no one can afford to pay it, then prices will come down. And it is.
No, wait a second. No, stop. This is only true if no one, as in the larger group.
No.
But if a small group can't afford it, but another group can.
Right. So if only 10% of the market can afford it, that's who's renting mansions. Right. If 95% of the market can afford it, that's who's renting apartments or flats or whatever. Right. So no, it is not going to be that rent goes up by 4% and every single market goes away, because within the market of housing, there are subcategories of market. Right? So maybe what happens is you rent a house, you raise the rent by 4%, and what you did is weed out 10% of the market, right? So the 10%, if the person in that 10% is the person renting your house, they go rent an apartment or a duplex or something, right? They move to a different part of the overall house. What you explain to the supply of who it is that can rent your house. Now, if you exceed the point where, and this is how the rent real estate market goes, if you exceed the point where, like, you charge $2,000 a month for your 4-bedroom house, but I can buy one for $400 a month, you're never renting that house. In all of time, you will never rent that house.
Yeah, but here you come. You're trying to. I have to rephrase this.
I have a question for two plebs, by the way. Are you for raising a minimum wage, just to get the record straight here?
I'm for getting rid of the minimum wage.
You're for getting rid of it, okay. I was just curious. I mean, it almost sounds like that you're arguing for devil's advocate then, or something.
No, not at all. Right. So I'm not saying that this is an argument even for or against these pricing schedules. I'm saying that this is how they work. It doesn't matter if they're a good idea or not. This is the reality of the situation, right? And this is why I keep saying we're getting away from the economics. Economics is the study of scarce resources with alternative uses. So I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm not giving a moral judgment of any kind. I'm saying this is how it works.
You are in fact, you can argue both sides. That's like what both sides of the argument.
Carlos, we can hear you now real badly.
Carlos, you sound worse than two plebs now.
What the fuck?
Okay, so if I may get a word in edgewise here and give out my 2 cents, just to exhibit of what an effect of raising the minimum wage has taken on Seattle, for example. From USA Today here, a report from the University of Washington found that when wages increased to $13 in 2016, some companies may have responded by cutting low-wage workers' hours. The study, which was funded in part by the city of Seattle, found that workers clocked 9% fewer hours on average and earned $125 less each month after the most recent increase. That's not really significant. Here, I'm going to link this article in the chat. There we go. That's not very significant, but there is still for me, there is still the principled side to raising the minimum wage, and that is just that I'm a capitalist. I believe in private property rights, and I believe that a business obviously falls under a person's own private property rights. And if you are telling them what wage they should or should not pay their employees, that is an infringement on how they want to run their business, thus an invasion on the private property rights. So both by practice and above all by principle, I am against the minimum wage entirely. I am for getting rid of it entirely, just to state my position.
Yeah, no, totally
I agree with you.
I suggest that this is a different set of variables. I originally limited it to all other things being equal, which, to be fair, I didn't say. So reasonable not to presume such a thing. On the other hand, what we were talking about is if you were a full-time minimum wage worker and minimum wage goes up, does your life, does the quality of your life? The answer is yes. Now, the likelihood they cut your hours is pretty great. Does that mean that you'll lose money? Possibly, depends on how much you cut your hours. I mean, there are a billion variables that go into this, but for the sake of just discussing whether or not you are a 40-hour-a-week minimum wage worker in the United States, if you maintain that variable as a constant, like, so stay 40 hours a week minimum wage, and minimum wage goes up, your life gets incrementally better. everyone who gets their hours cut beyond the point of making less money or even equivalent, right? Because now the cost of everything goes up for the price of things on shelf. Those people's lives are all worse. But if you stay constant at 40 hours a week minimum wage, the quality of your life does go up, if not very much.
Yeah, and I disagree with you. It doesn't go up at all. Actually, it goes down because of the inflation, because of the extra costs. And this is not just for the people at the minimum. If I look at myself, I'm doing a good job. I have a decent salary. I like my job, don't get me wrong. Nothing bad to say about that. If I look at what I earned 10 years ago, and if I look at what I earn today, I earn more money. My net pay is higher than it was 10 years ago. But due to inflation, the cost of living has gone up far more than the inflation of my salary. And this is true for someone with a medium income. On the far end, on the lower income, that difference is even bigger.
You are now changing variables. I said hold constant, right? So
no, I'm not changing variables at all. This is the illusion of minimum wage.
I quite literally said hold constant that you make minimum wage and work 40 hours a week, and then you went to I make more than minimum wage, and it's the same thing.
No. What I'm trying to explain to you is that inflation goes faster than the increase in wage, even if it is minimum wage.
Not necessarily, right? So there are many things.
But this is practically the case. This is what we see.
Not necessarily. There are many things that go into inflation, right? Specifically for fiat currency. So you can raise the minimum wage all you wanted as long as GDP was outpacing minimum wage growth by 400%.
My country's minimum wage has stayed stable for 7 years now, but inflation has gone off the roof. So I basically am earning proportionately less 5 years ago than I am now.
Hey, Modwain.
Yes.
A guy named Futternut in the main chat, in the Twitter chat, says he doesn't have the link.
I didn't send them to him because he wasn't there. And in all fairness, considering the time, I'm not going to stay on very much longer, to be honest.
All right.
So I'm sorry, Futternut. You're more than welcome next week.
Yeah, he could join the after stream.
No, because there won't be an after stream with me anyway.
Me neither.
Because
around and it's being dark.
Well, you guys can hang out. I don't mind, and I will love to invite Futternut for you guys. That's not the point. But in about 8 minutes, it's 2 a.m. and I do need to work tomorrow.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So
I'm actually feeling kind of tired myself.
Yeah. Well, it's exhausting. What can I say? Look, so the deal with minimum wage and inflation for your name starts with a C. I'm really bad with names.
Conservatarian or okay, never mind.
So you now effectively don't have a minimum wage if your inflation has gotten out of control relative to your minimum wage, right? This has happened in the United States before. Happened in the 60s before we went on the minimum wage hikes again, right? No one would accept it was like $1.25 to do the work that people were doing. So people were everywhere paying above minimum wage because the currency had been devalued so much that $1.25 an hour wouldn't get you anything, right? And so there was effectively, if not practically, no minimum wage. So hypothetically, you could hire someone for that $1.25 an hour, but no one was taking it. So people were paying $4 an hour because that was the going rate for the labor. So, and this is why I say that minimum wage and inflation are not a permanently forever linked thing. There can be more or less inflation and more or less minimum wage increases. When your minimum wage increase surpasses your inflation rate, which is what all of us are doing here in the West right now, right? So we're not devaluing the currency fast enough to keep this minimum wage thing up. And if we were, we would be Venezuela. So I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm just saying that that's what's happening. So when that push, $15 requires an amount of labor for, say, $15 worth of gold, word, a standardized item. So to get $15 worth of gold is still X quantity of labor. And yesterday, I could pay you $12, and so I only needed $12 worth of gold out of you. Well, we're trying to push the minimum wage above the inflation rate. This is why I said if your GDP growth was rising at 4 times the rate of inflation, or 4 times the rate of the minimum wage increase, it wouldn't matter, because at some point, no one cares about the minimum wage. Right? So if we devalued the currency, so it costs $1 million to get a loaf of bread, would it matter? Minimum wage was $15 an hour? No, no one would care. You'd be getting paid $4 or $5 million an hour. $15 an hour minimum wage wouldn't matter at all.
I have a scenario. Imagine there's no minimum wage anywhere. You have a grocery store. 3 blocks up the street is another grocery store that's competing against you. You both have exactly the same product. Now, you charge, let me finish. You charge $12 an hour to your 2 employees, and the grocery store up the street charges $15 an hour for the both 2 employees that he has. Do you think that your prices of the same product will be the same? Just on the minimum wage thing. Everything else is equal. Insurance, whatever. Everything else is equal.
So presumably you could either, presuming the prices were fixed, you could sell higher quality products.
The only variable is the minimum wage. Everything else is equal. Will you compete at $12 an hour more to your employees, or your 4 employees at $12 an hour? Forget it. I am too drunk. I retract my scenario. I'm not thinking straight. I really need to think this out.
You've got employees at $12 an hour. They've got 2 employees at 15.
Yeah, the 2 here. Yeah, the prices will be different. No, it's correct. Whose prices will be lower?
Most certainly, theirs will, just because of total dollar expenditure. But now this is a quality of employee and how you spread it appropriately.
No. Quality is just the
Guys, I am sorry. I hear we're going to start all over again, and it is a very interesting topic, so I really don't mind doing that. But considering it's only it's nearly 2 a.m., so I really do want to start calling it quits.
It's almost 1 here as well, so I want to go. 2 clubs and the dark. Let me see part of your team. You guys are conservative. You guys are awesome. I love talking to you guys. But that's it. We talk. No animosity. I really need to drink a bit more.
It's been great fun.
It's been fun, Carlos.
It's been fun.
Freaking confusing. That's what it's been.
I love talking. I love debating.
Anyway, anyone want to have any last words before I call it quits?
You guys that are already less than I'm a regular here, so I don't need to.
Yeah, I would like to give an outro or an intro for outro for myself. I am just some random conservative, libertarian, Christian, political, ranting edgelord on the internet named the Dark Conservatarian. Check out my channel. I have a news show and I do lots of response videos, some of them with gaming footage in the background. So please subscribe and don't forget to hit that bell button.
2 plebs.
I am Don of the 2 Plebs Talk News channel. There is, if you come visit the channel, usually a guy named Peter with me. He's a great dude. Despite how much of an economic optimist I am, we actually generally just talk about the news. We're the first result on Google for searching 2 Plebs, or you can youtube.com/2 Plebs Talk News, and you can watch 5 shows a week plus like 4.
Smirkus, you want to say something?
Not really.
Okay. John, any last words?
Yeah, subscribe to Alicia. She's great.
Eh?
Subscribe to Alicia. She's great.
Oh, subscribe to Alicia. Yeah, Alicia Clegg, really good. She's in the chat today. She didn't join us in here today, but yeah.
I'll check out her video right after this.
Yeah, she's got some really good stuff out there, mostly about the problems that we're having with the postmodernistic look into sexuality and the way we raise our children. And
today she did a video on mind control and brainwashing, and as she reminds us, that's the main focus of her channel.
Okay, fair point.
I do want to say it's been fun being back and talking with y'all again.
Yeah, it's been long, man. Don't stay away that long next time.
I just want to say, if you guys need anything about history, archaeology, and just relative science and debating, or debating in the good terms, I mean discussing, please hit me on. I love to talk. I want to debate Owen Jones, and I really want to debate one bowler hat guy, the one that has been talking today to anyone on the left, basically. I want to debate them without any animosity, of course. So hit me up. I will debate anyone.
Anyway, I'd like to thank everyone for joining tonight in the stream, but I also like to thank the people in the chat. Yeah, I'm not going to mention everyone now. I'm sorry. I'm just simply too naked. So I'm going to say bye-bye, and I'm going to push the broadcasting to stop.
Everybody have a good